Howdy folks, it's Giddy here, and welcome to Gathering with Giddy. Thank you for joining me as we traverse the world of Magic together. Here we will be delving into Magic the Gathering sealed products, deck techs, and much, much more. I'll be doing my best to upload regularly for all of you, so stay tuned and see what this channel has in store for you. This will be my very first video. Today we are getting into a Tuvasa the Sunlit EDH deck tech. Here she is. Sorry about the glare in advance. I'm not sure how bad it's actually going to show up. I'll make sure to put a digital version of each card in the video. Tuvasa, she's a pretty fun commander. She was a commander for one of the Commander pre-con sets. I believe it was 2018, yeah, 2018. She's a Bant commander. She originally, her commander was Estrid the Mask, the Planeswalker, but I just threw him in the 99. We'll get to him eventually in this video. But she's a great Voltron commander. She says, Tuvasa the Sunlit gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Whenever you cast your first enchantment, draw a card. And she's a 1/1, and she gets big really quick. So put her off to the side here, and we will get right into the enchantments, because that's what she is. She's an Enchantress Voltron deck. So first up, we have the ramp enchantments. I threw Nature's Will into the ramp section of the enchantments because it untaps all of your lands, so you basically get a second main phase if you can just get in there. Which is pretty easy to do in this deck, either giving trample or unblockable, protection from creatures, yada yada. Next up would be Zyndakar's Resurgent, because, you know, double lands, why not? Well, I shouldn't say double, additional land, because this also stacks Mirari's Wake. Both of them let you tap your lands for additional mana. Mirari's Wake actually gives the creatures you control +1/+1, and Zyndakar's Resurgence says whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, which isn't too important in this deck. I'm sure there's some sort of upgrade you could make yourself to sub this out for a lower mana cost of some sort, but this is what I had laying around, and it fits pretty nice once you get late game, and it really pops off, helps you. Next up on the list for ramp, we got our land enchantments. Wild Growth, Fertile Ground, Dawn's Reflection, Gift of Paradise, and Overgrowth. All of them are enchantment auras, and they let you tap your lands for additional manas. This one's an additional 2 green. This one, it allows you to tap your land for 2 mana in any combination, an additional 2 mana of any combination, additional green, additional 1 color of any mana, and this one just allows your land to tap for 2 of any color. But it nets you 3 life when it enters the battlefield. All of those are very good in this deck, especially when you get Estrid out, because he untaps all of your lands, all your enchanted permanents, so that's a big plus. So we'll move these on over to the side. Those look nice for y'all. And if you guys have any comments that you'd like to make on anything I can do differently in my future videos, this is my very first video, first deck tech I recorded. So I'm trying my best here, so if anything I can improve on, just let me know. So next on the enchantment lists, we have our draw enchantments, your draw power. Enchantress's Presence, whenever you cast an enchantment, draw a card. Rhystic Study, whenever your opponents play a spell, draw a card unless they pay one. Season of Growth, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, scry one. That's not really too important. It's the second ability, whenever you cast a spell that targets creature you control and draw a card. This deck that draws you a lot of cards because almost every enchantment is an aura, meant to buff your commander, Tuvasa. So that's a good one. I'll move those on. And Tuvasa herself is a small draw engine. It only triggers on the first one you cast, but a draw is a draw, especially when it's on your commander. It's nice. So next, we have Protection. First up is Light Minefield. Whenever one or more creatures attack, Light Field Mine deals damage to each of those creatures equal to the number of attacking creatures. So this basically completely shuts off 1/1 token decks, even bigger token decks, because it deals damage equal to the number of attacking creatures. So if they swing with 5/5/5s, all the 5/5s are getting dealt 5 damage and dying. So this really limits what people can swing at you, and it doesn't affect us at all because we're only generally swinging with Tuvasa, and she's gonna be big enough where the 1 damage isn't gonna kill her. And then next we have Leyline of Sanctity. It gives you hexproof, and if it's in your opening hand, you may start with onto the battlefield. This is a good one because you don't want people targeting you. There's like Aetherflux Reservoir, deal 50 damage to target player. Anything that target player mills, target player sacrifices, take control of target players next turn. We don't want anything targeting us unless we're doing it ourselves. Imprisoned by the Moon. I guess this is gonna be removal now. So let's move into here. I'm gonna count removal as protection, just because they're pretty much one and the same. You're gonna remove something to protect yourself. So we have Imprisoned by the Moon. It's a great enchantment. Enchant creature, land, or planeswalker. That permanent is a colorless land, would just add 1 mana and loses all of the abilities. So it's a pretty good card to shut off other people's commanders, and they can't do anything about it until they get rid of that. Next up is On Thin Ice. It's a snow enchantment. Enchant snow land you control. When On Thin Ice enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until On Thin Ice leaves the battlefield. So it's basically a 1-drop Banishing Light if you control snow permanent, a snow land. Which all the basics in this deck are. Speaking of Banishing Light, we run one as well, of course. And then we have Karmic Justice. Whenever a spell or an ability an opponent controls destroys a non-creature permanent you control, you may destroy target permanent that opponent controls. So this is a real good deterrent from people targeting your stuff to remove because they don't want their stuff to get removed. And this keeps it from happening. It's especially good with board wipes, or destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures that they don't control. They're gonna get messed up too. Next for protection, move this over here. Asceticism, basically saying your creatures can't be targeted by your opponents. It also allows you to pay a 1 and a green to regenerate one of your creatures. And that's great in this deck because generally our only creature that we would want to keep would be Tuvasa, and it's a very low mana cost and a reoccurring regeneration. Next we have Consulate Crackdown. Whenever Consulate Crackdown enters the battlefield, exile all artifacts your opponents control until it leaves the battlefield. It's a great 5 mana card, especially when your opponents are playing decks that are heavy artifacts like Urza or Saheeli. It's done wonders for me in the past. So next up is Martyr's Bond. Whenever it or another permanent you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a permanent that shares a card type with it. Now, just like Karmic Justice, this is another great deterrent for people to stay away from your stuff. So that completes the protection and removal section of my deck. Move these on over, give us a little bit more space here. Move Tuvasa over here. The next section of this deck is just general good stuff, enchantment-wise. So we have Starfield of Nyx. It's a great enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Reoccurring recursion every turn is pretty awesome. And it also says as long as you control 5 or more enchantments, each other non-aura enchantment you control is a creature in addition to its other types, with base power and toughness equal to its CMC, converted mana cost. So now my Martyr's Bond here is a 6/6, and my Asceticism is a 5/5. This thing really pops off when you have your board set up. Next on general good stuff would be Finest Hour. This is one of my favorite cards that was included in the pre-con deck. It says Exalted, so whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And then it also says, whenever a creature you control attacks alone, if it's the first combat phase this turn, untap that creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Now, usually extra combats are restricted to red colors. I'm sure there's a few cards out there not in red that I can't think of, but I'm pretty positive that Finest Hour is one of the very few that is outside of red that gives you extra combat phases. And it's great for this deck because it pumps Tuvasa twice, 3 times if you swing the second time with her. So it automatically gives her +1/+1 from her ability, and then the Exalted trigger will happen on attack, giving her an additional +1/+1 because she's attacking alone, because that's how the deck's built. And then on the second combat, when you attack with her again, she'll get Exalted again, triggering again, so she'll have a total of +3/+3 after the second combat, just from Finest Hour. And Finest Hour usually comes out after you've been stacking all the 1, 2 drop, 3 drop auras onto her, and she gets big and lethal quick. And we will get into all the good auras I have in this deck. Next is Enchanted Evening. This is a staple in this deck. All other permanents are enchantments in addition to their other type. It's so good. She says Tuvasa the Sunlight gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Now every permanent you control is an enchantment. All of your lands, all of your creatures, all of your artifacts. It sets her up really nice. If you have 10 lands, she's all lethal with Finest Hour. And that's only 2 enchantments on the battlefield. It's really good. Then we have Estrid's Invocation. It's a clone enchantment, so it enters the battlefield as a copy of any enchantment, but at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to exile it and return it to the battlefield as a copy of any enchantment you choose. I mean, you don't have to do that, so you can keep it as whatever enchantment you first copied, but if you think you'd get more value out of something else, like an aura that we come up on, it's really funny when you can get Eldrazi Conscription out onto your commander. And now your commander has +20/+20 and Annihilator 4. This deck gets insane. Next on the good stuff, Cradle of Vitality. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 2, 1 and a white. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on target creature for each 1 life you gain. Basically double your commander's power and toughness. She's a 10/10 with lifelink, or Armadillo Cloak on her. You swing, and now you pay the 2 extra mana. And she's a 20/20 because you gave her 10 +1/+1 counters. It's won me many games before dropping that on the battlefield. Next on the general good stuff would be Merit Lage's Slumber. Merit Lage has to be one of my all-time favorite tokens in the game. I run the land Dark Depths in my Maze's End deck just for fun. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more snow permanents, sacrifice Merit Lage's Slumber. If you do, create a Merit Lage token, which is a 20/20 indestructible black avatar with flying. It's pretty crazy. It also says whenever another snow enters the battlefield, scry 1. So it basically turns all your snow permanents into temples, and it pays off mid-game with a 20/20 token if you're able to get your land drops down. That'll complete it for the general good stuff and the enchantment sections, and we're gonna move right into enchantment auras. So first up on the list is Pariah. What it does is it says all damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to enchanted creature instead. Now the reason this is in the deck is because I don't want to get hit. And if I do get hit, I don't want to take the damage. So what I do is I would enchant someone else's creature, an opponent's creature, with the Pariah. And whenever someone dealt damage to me, it would instead get dealt to their creature, which is a good fog for, I don't know, a turn or 2, depending on how heavy everyone's swinging at you in particular, which there's a good chance people are in this deck because it gets threatening really quick. Looks like one card I forgot for the general good stuff would be Luminarch Ascension. And it says at the beginning of each opponent's end step, if I didn't lose life this turn, I may put a quest counter on Luminarch Ascension. And then when there are 4 or more quest counters on it, I can activate the second ability and put a 4/4 white angel with flying onto the battlefield for 2 mana. That seems pretty good in this deck. Especially, I mean, it's honestly pretty good in any deck that runs white. You drop this on turn 2 and you basically have 4/4 angels by turn 3. Next on the aura list is gonna be Steel of the Godhead. This is a very good one, especially for Tuvasa. It says, as long as enchanted creature is white, it gets +1/+1 in lifelink. That'll pair with Cradle of Vitality. There's the lifelink I was looking for. That'll give you all the 1/1 counters with Cradle and Steel of Godhead. And then its second ability is, as long as enchanted creature is blue, it gets +1/+1 and unblockable, which Tuvasa is both white and blue. So you're getting both of those abilities, and she is getting big. So with that, it gives it +3/+3 lifelink and unblockable. The extra +1 coming from her first ability. Next up is Unquestioned Authority. Gives you protection from creatures, basically unblockable. It's great in this deck. Hyena Umbra. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 in first strike. The important part of this card is Totem Armor. And if an enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. So it gives your Tuvasa a second life. Next, and an absolute bomb in this deck, is Ethereal Armor. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. Now it's basically just doubling her first ability. It's popping off with Enchanted Evening. Everything's an enchantment, so everything's giving it pluses. You drop this on turn 5 after you've played 3 other enchantments, and she's got +7/+7. Next, Sage's Reverie. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card for each aura attached to the creature, and then enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. So basically it's another Ethereal Armor, another first ability of hers. You can triple it up with those 2 cards. It's amazing. It's one of the reasons I put it in there. This deck is just all enchantments, so go big or go home. Speaking of going big or going home, Eldrazi Conscription. 8 mana tribal Eldrazi aura. Enchanted creature has +10/+10 and has Trample and Annihilator 2. If you drop this, it's almost game over if no one can touch you. Next is Bear Umbra. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has, whenever this creature attacks, untap all lands you control. And it also has Totem Armor, just like Hyena Umbra. All the Umbras are gonna have Totem on them. This is a great card. It gives it +2/+2, so it's rampant or buffing Tuvasa and then ramps you and basically gives you a whole nother second main phase to do everything. It untaps all of your lands. Crazy good in this, especially when you're drawing a bunch of cards and casting more enchantments, drawing more cards. You see the synergy come together really fast. And then next up we have Rancor. Very popular enchantment aura. It gives the enchanted creature +2/+0 and Trample. Whenever it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you return it to your hand. So this is a very good card in this deck because we'll always have it in our hand, especially with Tuvasa. And if as she gets removed and I have to drop her back out, that's only a 1-drop enchantment to enchant her, buff her up 3 because of her first ability. And then her second ability will trigger and I'll draw the card for 1 mana. Like I said, synergy, it works. Next, a very good and popular enchantment, Ancestral Mask. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment in play. It's like an Ethereal Armor and Sage's Reverie almost, but +2, so it's even better. All those stacked up together just makes Tuvasa a powerhouse. Especially with Ethereal Armor, it only costs 4 mana to enchant both. If you can drop both those the turn after you drop Tuvasa, it gets in there pretty quick. Next is Aqueous Form, a 1-drop blue enchantment that gives enchanted creature unblockable. I'd say that's pretty nice with Tuvasa, especially when we're making her lethal with all of these other enchantments. It also gives you a scry on attack. Scoot these up, make some more room for Armadillo Cloak, a 3-drop enchantment that gives it +2/+2 and Trample. It also gives it pseudo lifelink. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage, you gain that much life. Now, it's important that you understand pseudo lifelink versus actual lifelink because they stack. So if I were to give my commander Tuvasa Armadillo Cloak and Steel of the Godhead, they would stack and I would gain twice the amount of life. So if she was a 5/5 with both of them on her, then she would be gaining me 10 life because it has lifelink and pseudo lifelink. Whenever it deals damage, gain that much life. Armadillo Cloak is very, very good. Highly recommend it for this deck list. Next, that was included in the pre-con that I didn't take out because it's funny, is Octopus Umbra. Enchanted creature has base power, toughness 8/8, and has whenever it attacks, you may tap target creature with power 8 or less. It also gives it totem armor, so you can destroy it instead of the creature. The reason I kept it in here, like I said, was it's funny. I do it for the laughs. Turning my merfolk shaman into an octopus is always fun. It's also good because if someone's got one big blocker that's been in the way the whole game that I couldn't get through, this taps it down. They can't. No more blocking. Now, one of my favorite enchantments in this deck, maybe underrated, is Mask of Law and Grace. I haven't seen it too much in any other deck. It's a 1-drop white enchantment that says enchanted creature gains protection from black and red. Now, that's pretty nice because most black and red spells are removal spells targeting your commander, and that just shuts it off right there unless they pull enchantment removal, which isn't too heavy in black or red. They mainly deal with creatures and artifacts. With that, you just run through black and red decks because they cannot block your commander because it has protection from all of their creatures unless they just happen to be running artifact creatures as well. Now, another card that is great for this deck that is just like Ethereal Armor, an Ancestral Mask, and Sage's Reverie is All That Glitters. It came out in one of the newer sets, Throne of Eldraine. It says an enchanted creature has +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So just like Ethereal Armor, it's gonna stack for each enchantment that you control. So with that, it doubles Tuvasa's first ability, triples it with any of the other cards on it. It's one of the staples, I'd say. All those cards that give you +1 or +2 for each enchantment you control is amazing in this deck. And then last but not least, we have Sentinel's Eye. It's a 1-drop enchantment. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has vigilance. That's very good because I'm only swinging with Tuvasa and don't run too many other creatures in this deck list, so being able to have her not tap on attack is amazing, so I can keep her up to block. It really deters people from swinging at you with their big commanders trying to knock you out, because generally Tuvasa is going to be bigger than anyone else's commander on the board. And the second ability, Escape. Escape 1 white mana, exile 2 other cards from your graveyard. Escape means you can cast it from your graveyard by paying that cost of exiling 2 cards from your graveyard and the 1 white mana. And that's it for all the enchantments in this deck. In total, there are 43. All of them, I say, have their own role in this deck and play a crucial part to this deck's synergy. I'm sure that there's some sort of changes you can make to this deck to make it run more efficiently, but I honestly haven't seen any problems with the efficiency of it. It's all, I feel, personal preference. There's so many enchantment auras out there that you could end up choosing a completely different list, and Tuvasa will still run great because she's just that good of a commander for Voltron archetypes. Yeah, so let's just move on to the rest of the deck, the non-enchantments. So, well, since there's only one, we'll move into artifacts, and it's Soul Ring. I'd say that's a staple in any commander deck, and if you don't agree, well then, that's okay, because I'm pretty sure I don't run it in one of my decks just because I didn't have an extra, but it is what it is. So there's Soul Ring in here for your artifact. Next up, we'll move into instances and sorceries. For sorceries, ramp, we have Farseek. You can search your library for plains, island, swamp, or mountain. That hits my 2 colors other than green, but we run more forests than we do islands or plains, so this gets there. Next for, I'd call it fuel for the deck, is Krufix's Insight. You reveal the top 6 cards of your library and then put up to 3 enchantment cards from among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. That's a very good card in this deck, especially for only 3 mana. Like I said, there's 43 enchantments in this deck. The odds of you hitting 3 of them, or at least 2, is pretty high. So that's why it's included. It just fuels your hand for more casts, more draws off Tuvasa if it's the first enchantment you've casted. Next is the recursion portion of my sorceries. Creeping Renaissance. Choose a permanent type, return all cards with the chosen type from your graveyard to your hand. It has a flashback of 7 mana. So obviously you would choose enchantments in this deck for when your board gets wiped and you just return them all back to your hand and you're good to start enchanting Tuvasa all over again. It gets a lot of groans at the table after, especially when you had Tuvasa really big and they finally found an answer and you just start all over again the next turn. It's pretty fun. Speaking of recursion, we have Retether, a great recursion card for this deck. It says return each aura card from your graveyard to play. Only creatures can be enchanted this way. So it's not gonna be able to return our land enchantments back to the battlefield, but usually those aren't removed. But this is gonna re-enchant Tuvasa with everything that she might have lost the previous turn or during combat or something. And then we have our one board wipe for the deck is Winds of Wrath. Destroy all creatures that aren't enchanted and they cannot be regenerated. It's basically gonna kill everyone's creature except for your commander, as the goal anyways. Next, we have the removal portion of our instances, which is Bant Charm and Oblation. Bant Charm, you can choose one, destroy target artifact, put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library, or counter target spell. And then Oblation is a white Chaos Warp, except for instead of revealing the top card and putting it onto the battlefield if it's a permanent, they draw 2 cards. So I think it's better in my opinion, just because there's been so many times when I've hit something with Chaos Warp and they've gotten way better cards off the top. So we'll move these off to the side. Next, we'll move into the Planeswalkers. There are only 2 of them. As mentioned earlier in the video, we have Estrid the Masked. Now this is a foil peel altar that I did myself of the commander. Estrid says +2, untap each enchanted permanent you control, and then -1, and create a white aura enchantment token named Mask. Now the mask gives whatever you enchant totem armor. Totem armor is very, very good in this deck. As mentioned before, it allows me to destroy that enchantment instead of the creature. So it saves my commander a lot of times. I feel it's mostly used for the +2 ability of untapping each enchanted permanent, because that works very well with the enchant lands and ramps me very hard. And then it's -7 is put the top 7 cards of your library into your graveyard and then return all non-aura enchantment cards to the battlefield, and then do the same for auras. So first you're gonna hit all your world enchantments and then your auras to enchant your creatures. It's just another recursion effect in the deck, and it's amazing. Like I said, it helps you build back, just like the other recursion cards, build your board state back up when it gets wiped. And it looks pretty on the battlefield. Second Planeswalker is the new Calyx from Theros Beyond Death. Calyx says, look at the top 4 cards of your library and you may reveal an enchantment card from among them and put it into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom. Very good for extra draw and getting an enchantment to your hand. Its second ability is a -3, and it exiles a target creature or an enchantment you don't control until the target enchantment you control leaves. So it's a banishing light effect. Oh, and then of course his -7 is almost the same as Estrid's. Return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Instead of milling the top 7 then doing it, you're just gonna return all the enchantments that are already in your graveyard. Still very good, still a very good recursion effect for enchantments. I was very excited when they had released this card. I had to get one as soon as possible for this deck. So that'll be it for the Planeswalkers. And then last but not least, we will get into the creatures. First up is going to be our mana reductions, which include Herald the Pantheon, Transcendent Envoy, and Grand Arbiter Augustine. All of them are great in this deck, help a lot. It's just consistent ramp for the deck. It makes them all cost 1 less, all my enchantment spells cost 1 less, these 2 anyways. This one specifically says white or blue spells I play cost 1 less, but it also says spells your opponents play cost 1 more. So it slows my opponents down a little bit and helps me get going faster. Next on the creature list are my 2 enchantment creatures. Well, the third of the 3. So this one says, whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under my control, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So whenever I play an enchantment, my commander is now unblockable until end of turn. Very good in this deck. And this one says creatures I control have flying, and creatures my opponents control cannot have flying. It's just another unblockable card practically. unless they have reach, of course. But these two cards close out games pretty fast. Next, one of my favorites in this deck is Umbra Mystic. Auras attached to permanents you control have totem armor. So like we've mentioned before, totem armor says if the permanent it is attached to would be destroyed, remove all damage and destroy it instead. So all of your enchantments are now totem armor and protect your commander like crazy. Another fun card in this deck would be Palisade Giant. All damage that would be dealt to you or another permanent you control is dealt to Palisade Giant instead. So if you're able to get Indestructibility enchantment, which I've been meaning to get for this deck, you're untouchable. Because if he can't die, then no matter how much damage is being dealt to him, he's still gonna live, and you're gonna have a nice little fog on your hand there, permanent fog. Another enchantment cost reducer I forgot is Starfield Mystic, very good one. And whenever an enchantment is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on him. So he gets big if people are wiping your board. And then my very last creature of the deck is Wall of Reverence. It's a defender flying, it's a 1/6, and at the beginning of your end step, you may gain life equal to the power of target creature you control. Now this pairs very well with Cradle of Vitality, the enchantment I mentioned earlier that whenever you gain life, you can pay 2 and then put a 1/1 counter for each life gained on target creature. Yeah, so that concludes it for the deck tech on non-land permanents anyways. I will mention the lands real quick. I don't run too many crazy good lands in this deck. It was budget at one point. It's just been kind of upgraded over time with cards that I've acquired from packs or trades and whatnot. But there are 4 plains, 6 islands, and 7 forests. That's my basics. And then just a quick thumb through of the non-basics. We have the non-basics that ramp for basics, all the dual color basic or non-basics, more ramp into colors I need, scry temples, bounce lands for the double, cycle, command tower. It's a pretty simple mana base, but that doesn't really matter when it comes to this deck, I feel like. I generally draw the colors I need, and there's not too many split mana costs or double mana costs, so I don't usually have trouble with my mana base, especially with like Zendikar's Resurgent and Mirari's Wake and all the land enchantments. You're pretty set on your mana base when it comes to that. So that concludes my very first deck tech. I would like to thank you if you stuck around this long to see it through. I hope to hear from you guys in the comments about what you thought, any cards you might have suggestion in throwing in the deck, any changes you might want to see, any suggestions for future deck techs, maybe some commanders you want to see be done. I can do that. Also, I would like to mention that I will be doing future giveaways. This will include relic tokens, the life counters, Magic the Gathering promo cards, just expensive Magic cards, anything really that I get my hands on and want to throw to you guys. And when that time comes, I will let you know more details on how to enter and whatnot. Thanks again for joining me today, folks. I hope you enjoyed everything we went over. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to support me. Also, smash that bell icon to get updates on all new content I post. Make sure to keep a lookout for all the giveaways.